When many of you think about Dwarf Fortress, you probably think about this. A colorful, active, alive, decently well-running video game that allows you to control a colony of dwarves in a pseudo-3D environment in massively procedurally generated worlds. But this game is old, and I mean really old. But to understand just how old, well, the easiest way to do this is by going to bay12games.com/dwarves and scrolling all the way down to the bottom. And then you'll see this handy list. This is a list of logs. When you click on the bottom log, you can see when the patch notes started for Dwarf Fortress. But the game is actually several years older than that. In fact, it started around October 2002, but the original forum posts from those days are lost. Even the Internet Archive insists that it no longer exists. However, some hope still remains. While I was unable to find the original Dwarf Fortress forum posts on the Internet Archive, I was, however, able to find the original Dwarf Fortress website on the Internet Archive. This is the original version of bay12games.com/dwarves, archived in all of its red and yellow glory on the Internet Archive. Tightly hidden inside of this time capsule are a few CMV movies, which I was actually able to play by finding a community member's CMV video player on the Bay12 forum linked on the Dwarf Fortress file depot. Now, this might seem a little bit pointless, me showing you these videos, but this is actually the earliest available footage of Dwarf Fortress's existence. Back in those ancient history days, Dwarf Fortress was a side project, and this side project was called Dwarf Game. Dwarf Game was Tarn returning to his roots in a lot of ways. As Armok was a fully 3D ambitious thing, Dwarf Game was intended to allow Tarn to stretch out and take a break from working on such a strenuous, massive project. Giving a break, if you will, in the monotony of developing slowly small features for a very big, expansive game. Dwarf Fortress was an attempt to have faster development and just get a project finished. I've heard several different numbers, but roughly the project was supposed to take 3 to 6 months. The concept for the game is you are an adventurer of some various origin, adventuring into a dwarven fortress that had since been destroyed, looking to see if you could discover the secrets and uncover what happened there. If you found enough of the artifacts scattered around the place, you then had the opportunity to leave and get a high score. However, this game, Dwarf Game, eventually came to its logical conclusion of the player controlling the dwarves, building the fortress, to then explore it at a later date as the adventurer. But let's take this back to the Bay12 Games website for a second here. 2004. There is a list right beneath the 2004 log that says Dwarf Fortress started in October 2002, which is the post I unfortunately was unable to find. This log was started around the same time as the Back to the Dwarf Game thread. If we have a peek at that thread, which still exists, Tarn's first post is in August 31st, 2004, 8:19 p.m. And Tarn says, "There are 79 more tasks left until the Dwarf Game is complete. Some of them are rather large. While I'm working on that, I set up a dwarf page with a movie player, which of course is the one that we found on the Internet Archive, and some movies you can download. The movie files are fairly large, but the player itself comes with one of a river through the woods, and I've put the movie files in different bundles so you don't need to download the ones you aren't interested in. I have to say that the concept of 79 tasks being left until Dwarf Game is complete is rather amusing. This particular forum thread is 57 pages long. Tarn posts in various places. If we jump to the 55th page of the thread, Tarn actually states on August 7th, 2006, "You can grab it here." Some people comment that the link isn't working, and then Tarn gives a direct link to the download. As we scroll down through the thread, another user confirms it runs on Linux, which is also a very interesting piece of history. Tarn's final post in this thread says a lot about the next almost 20 years. On August 14th, 2006, 10:02 p.m., they are doomed anyway. Poor things.
It's a game that you don't win, but you always lose in the end.
However, the game that Tarn released was very different than the one we all know now. That game was 2D. It ran on a flat plane, a game of building a fortress for dwarves, and then later exploring it with your adventurer. The game ran a lot slower than the game runs now. Comparatively, the game runs at about 15 frames a second compared to now. It's also only ASCII. Of course, there were a couple tile sets that appeared over time, but initially this was all that we had. But the game had released at a very convenient time.
So we released the game back in 2006 and just threw up a PayPal button and asked people, if they wanted to help us out, we could keep going. I had just $1,000 from random people that month back in August 2006.
And receiving a couple donations and enough funding to pay rent for the month, Tarn thought this was rather exciting and continued developing the game. But something was happening on the Bay 12 forums. In November 10th, 2006, a Let's Play, started by a number of characters. This Let's Play was hosted on the Bay 12 forum. The intro, written by Evil Slug, writes down exactly what this Let's Play was. A succession fortress. A Let's Play of the game Dwarf Fortress, where they chronicle the dwarven fortress of Boat Murdered, and each player gets a turn with the save file, and then has to write down their experiences and the adventures of the fortress. Initially, this Let's Play didn't get too much traction, but as time went on, people started to share it, and the story became a cultural phenomenon, being reposted consistently throughout the internet, surfacing massively on sites like 4chan. The discovery of this video game, Dwarf Fortress, spread quite rapidly, and the game quickly became known as a mythical game of incredible depth. But as time went on, the game began running into issues with its 2D format. Issues with building bridges over water and allowing water to flow. Issues with pathing and various frame rate problems. The game began to expand in its potential scope, and Tarn began to make posts about what would happen if the game loop changed quite considerably. Where would the game end up if the game went from a flat plane to a 3D plane? What would happen if the single layer fortress you were building could be built up and down in 3 dimensions? Would the game change dramatically? There are some things that the old 2D version of Dwarf Fortress had that we still do not have in Dwarf Fortress now. The flat plane allowed for more scripted events, such as floods, and also gave the game a much more gamey feel, and less of a wide open sandbox. When you scrolled to the edge of the map, it would just scroll infinitely, and you could sort of see the world fading off into the distance. It had a really neat level of polish, but at the same time, an incredible amount of jank. On October 29th, 2007, Dwarf Fortress 0.27.169.32a released, and then immediately was patched to fix the spelling of negotiator. But the game became 3D. Admittedly, a lot more primitive than it is now. But still, if you go back and play that version, you can see the framework of the game that we play today. Dwarf Fortress, a game that began as a 3-month side project, moving to a multi-year game, releasing a very long time ago, and then 1 year later, completely changing from the very quaint little fortress builder that it once was, to the art piece that is in 2 museums, has a documentary, and has sold almost 1 million copies. It's kind of fascinating knowing that the original game was planned to be just simply an adventure mode kind of score attack game. Tarn's even described it as an arcade game. Dwarf Fortress is a fascinating thing to look at, and with a few more videos I intend to cover the history of Dwarf Fortress. This video was the early years. And in the next one, I hope to cover what then became a legend. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope to see you in the next one.